Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well today. This time we're going to be talking about 10 horror games on the Sega Genesis. Haunting is an incredibly unique game that EA made, or at least published, back when they gave a shit. Now they obviously don't. In this game, you play as Poltergeist, and you are trying to scare this family out of a series of homes. You use a bunch of different traps. Some of them are proximities, some of them are kind of more active and you can control them. Others, you kind of have to wait a little bit for them to get into this. You're just trying to scare these people out of this home, then you go on to the next home and scare them out of that. It is a ton of fun to do. And yeah, you can really creep these people out. Oh my gosh, I love this game so much. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that goes into it about corporate greed and how this guy's trying to get revenge on this family. And yeah, that's all interesting and everything, but I never paid attention to the story while I was playing it. Splatterhouse 2 is one of the many games that got me really excited for the Sega Genesis back when I was a kid. A friend of mine rented this game, and it was amazing how different it was from all the other NES games that I was used to playing. And yeah, I thought the main character was Jason from Friday the 13th. I was a little kid, and I didn't know any better. And hell, he kind of has a hockey mask on, so yeah, forgive me for being a stupid little kid for a while. This is a side-scrolling beat-em-up that is in some ways similar to like Altered Beast, but much more brutal and honestly a lot better. It controls really well, you can pick up different weapons, and you're just smashing the hell out of enemies the whole time. It is pretty creepy, especially the opening cutscene. There are some times when I think just the 2D beat-em-up style does not work very well. But for the most part, it is a very creepy game, it's done very well, and it is a ton of fun to play. Splatterhouse 3 is a game that I didn't really start playing or didn't discover until I started collecting video games in the late 90s. It's a more traditional beat-em-up, and it's similar to something like Streets of Rage or Final Fight, in that you're not locked in two dimensions like you were with Splatterhouse 2. The monsters are a little bit creepier. It, in my opinion, doesn't look as good as Splatterhouse 2, but it is still pretty creepy. You have a lot more freedom of movement in this, so you're exploring a mansion, and you also have a time limit, which I found kind of annoying, but it does play into several of the endings of the game. It's pretty awesome to go through, even though it can be a little frustrating as you're kind of lost in a maze for a little bit. Predator 2 is kind of an odd entry on this list, and I didn't really know exactly what I was getting into when I started playing it. It is a top-down run-and-gun shooter, and it's pretty awesome. The gameplay does get repetitive at times, but you're running around killing people left and right and collecting drugs. Also, you're saving hostages. So, yeah, it's honestly pretty awesome. The Predator does show up every once in a while. When you lose the game, the Predator will appear and he's, holding Bill Paxton's spine, which isn't really you, but hey, it's still kind of cool regardless. And it is based on a horror movie, so it kind of works for this. So let's go back to beat-em-ups with Alien Storm. It's kind of a sci-fi horror as you're killing aliens left and right, but you're doing it by beating the shit out of them and occasionally shooting them with a flamethrower. I like it an awful lot, and it does sort of have that horror theme to it. It's not just a side-scrolling beat-em-up, though. You also have these shooter scenes, which are pretty awesome in their own right, and it kind of feels like a rail shooter in some ways. You have to kill the aliens before they hit you. There are some power-ups that you can pick up along the way, and you just kind of have to blow everything up on the screen. You might not be using your flamethrower anymore, but it's still pretty cool. You have 3 characters to choose from, and each one has their own super attack, so everything is pretty great with this. It is a beat-em-up though, so the gameplay is going to be just a little bit repetitive at times. Decap Attack is another in a long line of Vic Tokai's games where the player throws something at their enemies. In this case, it's a stone head that you can pick up because, hey, you're a decapitated mummy, or at least a mummy with its face in your chest. I don't actually know what's going on with this guy, but hey, it's kind of fun regardless. As you can tell, this is a side-scrolling platformer where you play as a mummy named Chuck D. Head. Do you want more kind of goofy pun names? Well, if you thought I didn't have any more, you were created by a doctor named Dr. Frank N. Stein. And that's all I got. Anyway, you're trying to defeat a demon. Your only real weapons are your weird face attack or throwing your stone head that you occasionally pick up at enemies. It's, for the most part, pretty fun, but it does have some bullshit to it. Actual platforming in this game can be a little challenging because every platform feels like it's just coated in ice. And you have a lot of enemies that respawn. Everything is sort of like a goofy horror, which can be fun at times. I enjoy it, but I can see how others might be a little bit turned off by it. Alien 3 on the Sega Genesis is one of those games that I wanted to like a lot more, but there's just some bullshit to it that was keeping me from really enjoying this one. It has a very scary atmosphere, and I like the fact that the aliens can jump out of nowhere to get you. What I don't like is that you don't have enough time to react to them, whether it's because they're on you too fast, or because Ripley can't shoot her gun in time. Either way, you're gonna end up getting hit by them, which is really annoying. So in this game, you play as Ripley, and you're trying to save a bunch of people who have been captured by the aliens. It kind of follows the plot of Alien 3. In my opinion, it creates a better plot for Alien 3 because you actually have guns, and in the movie you just had flamethrowers, and there was only one alien. But whatever, they had to take some liberties with this in order to make it a fun game to play. And this might have actually been a better plot for the movie than the actual plot to the movie. Okay, Ghostbusters on the Sega Genesis is fantastic. It's a side-scrolling platformer where you can shoot in just about any direction. You have a lot of control over your player. It looks pretty goofy because everybody has like these big bobbleheads. I think most people know by now Winston isn't in this game for whatever reason, and you go around to a few different locations fighting ghosts, whether it's the main ghost or whether you're fighting a bunch of enemies that just happen to be there. Each of the locations has a boss monster that you have to fight, or a boss ghost that you have to fight, and you also have a shop that you can buy different equipment in, which in some cases comes in incredibly handy, and in others it's just kind of like, well, thanks, I've got that now. Why? But overall, it's a really fun game. It's a great premise, and yeah, everything about it is just really kind of entertaining and goofy. I have a love-hate relationship with this series of games. I want to like the Ghost and Goblins series more, but I'm just so bad at them that I have just a real difficulty playing them and really enjoying myself and not yelling at the screen every once in a while. Each of these games has a just wonderful horror setting to it. It's very creepy, and yeah, I love it, but I'm awful at it. This version of the game has a pretty interesting story behind it. Sega developed the game as kind of a workaround because Capcom wasn't able to publish games on their system, so they licensed the property to Sega, who created the game themselves. It's pretty cool, and I think they did a great job with it. It is just like the arcade game. It's very hard, but it is a fun game to go through. It takes a lot of time, but it's a lot of fun. Now we get to my favorite Castlevania game. It has great graphics, and I just love having the option of playing as one of two different characters. Everything about this game is awesome. At least I like everything about this game. There are some spots where it isn't as good, just the backgrounds don't look as interesting as they probably could, but what makes up for it is just how much fun the game is, and, how easy some parts of it are. Having two different playable characters creates a lot of options to play the game, and also gives you different paths to go through the levels, so there's a little bit of replayability here. So the game takes place during World War I, in kind of an alternate timeline in the Castlevania lore, so it's not exactly happening in the continuity of the other Castlevania games, if that really matters at all. And it's pretty cool. You play as John Morris or Eric Lacard, and you get to use one of two weapons in order to beat the different minions of Dracula. If you can only play one game out of all of these, I would play Castlevania Bloodlines. It's the one that I feel is just the best. It's a ton of fun to play through, and in my opinion, it's the best of the Castlevania games. There are more horror games for the Sega Genesis. Some of the ones just off the top of my head are The Ooze, The Immortal, Bram Stoker's Dracula isn't too bad on this, and also Zombies Ate My Neighbors is pretty cool as well. I did not include games for the Sega CD or the 32X, so if you're wondering where Night Trap was, I figured those deserve to be on their own list. There are some really cool horror games on those systems, or on those add-ons, I should say, but I felt like this one should just be for the Sega Genesis. Horror stories and ghost stories are some of my just favorite things in this world. I love the idea of being scared by something that just shouldn't exist. While we don't always get that from the horror games on the home consoles, they do try to get across an atmosphere or something like that is at least attempting to scare you. The Sega Genesis and the Mega Drive, they were targeting a more mature audience, at least in North America they were, and horror games were a big part of that. And a good number of them are on the system, and they occasionally could scare you. I could see a younger kid being scared by some of them, but for the most part, we're looking at stuff that doesn't always come across as being scary. At some point, I'll dig through my other games and put together a best of list or just another 10 games list or something like that, either for the Sega Genesis, the Sega CD, or the 32X, if I ever decide to care about the 32X, which I wouldn't hold my breath on that one. Let me know if I left off some of your favorite games, or if you think I overlooked some. Just let me know in the comments below, and I will talk to you all later. Bye.